After 30 days in captivity, the rescue of the remaining 130 students and staff of St. Mary's Catholic School, Papiri, Niger State, marks a fitting end to the year. Well, it tells the story of the government's resilience to make things right after a meltdown. But analysts say this does not tell the whole story. They are cautious and warn that we must learn the lessons as we count down into 2026. Well, here is a tale of the politics of Nigeria's insecurity in 2025.
How come no arrest has been made? I expect there should be arrests of those criminals.
Now, despite efforts to nip Nigeria's security challenges in the bud, the books are closing in 2025 with the nation still sandwiched in recurring security challenges, with an alarming number of mass abductions and communal killings, with school students not spared. The first half of 2025 was plagued with a shocking surge in killings. From the northeast to the north central and down to the south, communities became battleground for insurgents, bandits, gunmen, and armed headers, leaving thousands dead and countless displaced. The north-central states of Plateau and Benue, two states that border each other and are pivotal to the country's food production, remain the most affected. Nigeria's National Human Rights Commission, in its recent figures, reveals the second quarter of 2025 was the deadliest in a decade for Nigeria in the numbers of mass attacks and deaths recorded. Headlining these was the June massacre at Yelwata and Dauda communities in Benue State, where over 182 people were killed and over 3,200 displaced. While Yelwata was the climax, bloodbaths had already occurred on April 13th, when over 51 people were killed and dozens injured in the renewed attack on the Zeke community, Kimakba, in the Kwol district of Basa local government area of Plateau State. Before then, more than 50 people had been killed, many in their sleep, on April 2nd during attacks by gunmen in Huti, Josho, Dafo, and Manguna in Bokos local government area of Plateau State. Reacting to these assaults, the governor of Plateau State, Caleb Mufwang, called the violence orchestrated genocide, and his Benue State counterpart, Hyacinth Alia, described it as a systematic ethnic cleansing.
The people who are attacking us now, plus the armed headers, are not just coming with any herds at all. They don't come with cows. Rather, they come fully armed with their AK-47 and AK-49. They come in alone, wear one dress, and they can stay in the bushes as long as they can until they do their attacks, and then they disappear. After a week or two, then they come in now, there are folks coming now to occupy those spaces. If you go to Kasinala local government, in most part of Ukum local government, this is the occupation that is made. If you now come to Gwe West local government, it's even worse. Now, here's the thing. These attacks are deliberate.
While these attacks had the highest numbers of casualties, there were many more in rural communities in Edo, Adamawa, Borno, Taraba, Niger, Yola, Kwara, Kogi, and even Enugu states. In March alone, the gruesome mob killing of 16 travelers of northern extraction in Uromi, Edo State, sparked nationwide outrage. According to reports, the hunters traveling from Port Harcourt to Kano for Muslim holiday celebrations were falsely accused of kidnapping by local elements. The situation was similar on June 20, when 12 wedding guests got killed in Mango local government area. The victims were traveling from Zaria in Kaduna State to Kwanpan local government area for a wedding ceremony when they lost their way and were ambushed by a mob. The Human Rights Commission, in its dashboard for January to June 2025, titled Families Torn Apart, Livelihoods Destroyed and Futures Extinguished in Moments of Senseless Brutality, says Nigeria recorded more conflict-related killings in the first 6 months of 2025 than in the whole of 2024. The dashboard shows that at least 2,266 people were killed between January and June 2025, surpassing the 2,194 deaths recorded for the entire previous year. The toll stood at 1,083 during the same period in 2024. The Rights Commission's dashboard also reveals that Nigeria in November 2025 recorded the highest number of abductions since 2014. It says there were 815 kidnappings of farmers, students and worshippers, out of which 217 people were killed. Independent analysis paints an even darker picture. A report by SBM Intelligence reveals that between January and August 2025, at least 5,450 people were killed in violent conflicts nationwide.
The National Human Rights Commission received 169,850 complaints from our 38 offices nationwide, a stark reminder that human rights violations persist in diverse forms and at an alarming scale. Each of these complaints represents a person, a family, a community seeking justice, accountability, and relief. In the Northeast, we are seeing the resurgence of Boko Haram, and in the Northwest, banditry and insurgents continue to challenge our communities. Violence and criminalities in the Southeast are assuming alarming dimensions, all impacting on human rights.
While these killings have continued unabated, the actions of the terrorists have put Nigeria on the spotlight internationally. For years, Nigeria's conflicts have been attributed to different reasons, such as religious and ethnic clashes. Others cited are deforestation caused by climate change, land grabbing, population growth, urbanization, and industrialization. But in October, a social media post by US President Donald Trump made this a global subject. In a post on Truth Social, Trump accused the Nigerian government of not doing enough to prevent the killings of Christians. The US president threatened to cut off aid to Nigeria and ordered Pentagon to prepare for possible action over persecution of Christians. Days later, the State Department officially updated its designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern for its alleged severe violations of religious freedom and persecution of Christians. Since then, there have been several discussions at the U.S. Congress on the situation in Nigeria, while a high-level Nigerian government delegation led by the National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu has met with Congress representatives in discussions now termed globally as Nigeria's Christian genocide. Only recently, congressional delegation led by Congressman Riley Moore concluded a fact-finding mission to Nigeria and still holds strong opinions about the killings being religiously motivated. As 2025 comes to an end, while there are no American boots on the ground in Nigeria yet, the United States has in the meantime imposed new travel restrictions after President Trump on December 15th signed a new proclamation adding Nigeria among 15 countries placed under partial entry restrictions.
All the indicators that would have told us that that is going to happen were there. As early as March this year, the U.S. Congress did pass a resolution to that effect. In July, the United States Commission for Religious International Freedom, USCRIF, also released its report on Nigeria, and it was very clear in that report when it recommended for the categorization of Nigeria under the country of particular concern. Before then, we know that at least 6 congressional visits have taken place to Nigeria. Different senators, different parliamentarians from the U.S. Have visited Nigeria, and in most instances have gone to Benue, have gone to Plateau State. Yes, they will come back to Abuja, maybe sometimes go to Lagos and meet. But then, the fact that they are not going to Zamfara, they are not going to Katsina, will give you an indication of what kind of report they are going to give back. And of course, the U.S. Embassy that also has a representation for USCRIF is also sharing its report. So we were not surprised. What is surprising, however, is this escalation to threaten to attack a sovereign state This is completely against the rules-based system that we are used to, that the world has embraced. Another country cannot threaten, the sovereignty of another state over an allegation that it has not even allowed the other country to respond to. So clearly, there are other issues at play here. And one of the issues at play, Dr. Abati, is the domestic politics in the U.S. A lot of what is going on really is to align and strengthen and consolidate, his grassroots support, as it were, by mentioning things around, protecting Christianity across the world. That resonates very well with his local support base. Whether he would carry out that threat, we're not sure. The fact that he's carrying out that threat in a country like Venezuela, even though the issues are different, there it's about drug trafficking, and there is a direct correlation between the drug trafficking and the happenings within the United States.
2025 saw the return of mass school abductions, headlined by the kidnappings of school children in Maga and Papiri in Kebbi and Niger states. In November, Nigeria was rocked by 2 mass abductions from schools in 1 week, with over 300 children and teachers taken by armed gangs cumulatively. On November 17, gunmen kidnapped 25 female students from Government Girls Comprehensive Senior Secondary School in Maga, Kebbi State, killed the vice principal Hassan Makuku, and left the principal with a gunshot wound. It was worse on November 21, when armed gangs stormed St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri, Niger State, abducting students and teachers with 315 persons unaccounted for. It took coordinated efforts to ensure 280 students and teachers return in barges, many after a month in captivity. The authorities say there is none left behind and blame accounting for the complication. Also devastating is the effect on education. In November, Nigeria faced one of the largest coordinated school shutdowns in recent history, prompted by a surge in security threats and mass abductions targeting educational institutions in the north. This leaves many wondering the fate of the Safe School program launched by previous administrations.
This document was launched in 2022, like you said, December 16 precisely, and the implementation was supposed to commence in 2023. For the purpose of the implementation, this program was to run from 2023 to 2026. That's the period, the duration. Now, for this period, for the duration of the 4 years, the total investment of federal, state, and local government was put at 144 billion naira. So for 2023 budget, 16 billion was approved for the program. If this plan was implemented, we're sure that significantly these issues of kidnapping will have been, particularly in the states we call most at-risk states. There were 19 states, and this plan was to focus on addressing the kidnapping in those areas. But look, we're supposed to have what we call a critical infrastructure backbone that support this. It's not in place. So initially what was done because of the funding was just a few items here and there and a few, whatever could have been done. But sustained funding was to make a difference. So really, this is a dead document without money. And that's what has happened to Nigeria.
While successes by the military and other security agents in curtailing terrorist threats can't be disputed, Nigerians are worried that the conflicts are opening up in new fronts, hence leading to President Bola Tinubu dedicating a huge budgetary provisions of 5.4 trillion naira in the 2026 national budget to tackling insecurity. For instance, Kwara and Kogi states, once known for their peaceful environments, have witnessed a disturbing increase in violent incidents. Reports indicate that armed groups, often referred to as bandits, have been terrorizing communities, leading to a climate of fear and displacement among residents. In November, an attack by daring bandits at a branch of the Christ Apostolic Church in Oke-Shegun, Eruku, captured in live stream video, led to national and international outrage. The gunmen had stormed the church during a worship session and opened fire on worshippers. At least 3 people were killed and several others injured, including the pastor. This happened while the world watched as the prayer service held Thanksgiving of 18 residents who had only recently regained freedom from a previous captivity after 2 months was being live-streamed. Amid the gloom, security forces scored a major breakthrough: the arrest of top 2 leaders of Ansaru, Nigeria's Al-Qaeda affiliates who have been on an international watch list. Announcing the capture, National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu says Amir Mahmoud Mohammed Usman, also known as Abu Bara, Ansaru's self-proclaimed emir, and his deputy Amir Mahmouda were arrested during targeted operations between May and July 2025. According to the NSA, the duo masterminded several high-profile attacks, including the 2022 Kuje prison break. The international community hailed the Nigerian government over the successful operation.
The group was first formed in January 2012 with a public declaration in Kano. It emerged as a splinter faction from Boko Haram, positioning itself as a humane alternative. However, its stated aim quickly turned into attacking Nigerian security agencies and operatives, civilian communities, and government infrastructure. The group publicly displayed the setting sun logo of Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, signaling its ideological and operational alignment with global jihadist movements.
In a development that stirred significant national attention, at least 16 senior officers of the Armed Forces of Nigeria were detained by military intelligence, while the Defense Headquarters described the move as an internal disciplinary matter, citing allegations of indiscipline and breach of service regulations. News sources within the Defense Intelligence Agency dispute that narrative, insisting the arrests were linked to an active plot to stage a coup. Citing the 2025 Independence Day parade cancellation in Abuja, reports said it was a preemptive security measure by the government. For political observers, this was not surprising, considering the ongoing military incursion into politics across West Africa that has got ECOWAS heads of states and governments rattled.
There's no military personnel that would, in all sense of, reasonableness, think he can, propagate a coup in Nigeria. Because Nigeria right now is even gone beyond the issue of having a coup. Yes, there's no doubt about it. People, there'll always be resistance, people trying to instigate the state against the government and all of that. And, some people might just feel they can take advantage of the current hardship in the country to initiate suggestions of coup, but I don't think that is a reality. It's not something that can happen.
Days after, it didn't come as a surprise when President Bola Tinubu made changes in the hierarchy of the service chiefs, sacking the Chief of Defense Staff, the Chief of Naval Staff, and the Chief of Air Staff. That decision saw the promotion of the Chief of Army Staff to head the military hierarchy as CDS, while the Chief of Defense Intelligence was retained and promoted. It is a decision many see as a reward for foiling the alleged attempted coup. A presidential statement describes the action as being taken in furtherance of the efforts of the federal government of Nigeria to strengthen the national security architecture. And despite the restructuring of the security architecture, including personnel and military operations, insecurity persists. Within weeks of the change of the security chiefs, Nigeria witnessed a barrage of attacks. To reinforce the security architecture across the country, President Tinubu appointed former military chief Christopher Musa as the Minister of Defense after the resignation of Mohammed Badaru. To address the biting insecurity, President Bola Tinubu ringed in several other security reforms. These include the withdrawal of police officers attached to very important persons across the country, directing that they be redeployed to core policing duties. VIPs requiring protection will now be assigned armed operatives of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps.
Following this announcement, a total of 11,566 personnel have been recalled and will be deployed to active policing duties immediately.
He also approved the recruitment of additional 50,000 police personnel. Also, the upgrade of police training facilities nationwide, recruitment, training and arming of forest guards, including mandating the DSS and other security services to increase recruitment, are all now in the mix. Livestock reforms aimed at controlling cattle grazing are also being put in place.
First of all, we must commend the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, for taking bold steps, especially the declaration for national emergency on security. This is quite interesting and quite good. But for several reasons, there are lots more issues and lots more challenges. It is not all about changing the people. Go and change the chief of service chiefs every day, every week, every quarter, and biannually. Go and change the minister every 10 months, but count them as a failure. If government refuses to address corruption, if government refuses to hold people accountable and responsible for their actions and inactions, if government is not ready to be responsible itself, and as far as we continue to have issues around leadership, and as far as we continue to have issues in the midst in the judiciary and the legislative maze also, because there are a lot of issues around the legislators. They don't even understand what are really the issues.
10 years after the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, was first arrested and charged with treasonable felony and terrorism-related offenses, the case came to an end in November, with the court finally convicting him on all 7-count amended charges. The court subsequently sentenced him to life imprisonment for committing acts of terrorism against Nigeria and the Nigerian people. Within the period, Kanu was tried by 4 different judges of the Federal High Court, jumped bail to Kenya, and rearrested and extradited to Nigeria from Kenya. Nnamdi Kanu's conviction comes after a district court in Finland in September sentenced Simon Ekpa, a self-styled Prime Minister of the Biafra Republic government in exile, to 6 years in prison after finding him guilty of terrorism-related offenses.
For the immediate measure, you can say we have relative peace. But is it a lasting peace? Never. It can never be a lasting peace. Number one is that when you check the parameters used in measuring the level of insecurity, Southeast is still boiling. It's still boiling. We have always ultimately focused insecurity towards the agitation and insurgents. But what of other forms of insecurity? And no attention is being paid to those ones anymore. We have been fighting so hard against the IPOB and ESN. What happens to the conventional kidnappers? What happens to the armed robbers? What happens to the courtesans? What happens to every other form of vices that has been engulfing as a result of the idleness and on the usage of the youthful force that is very, 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 very domiciled in Southeast. The Holy Book said that the idle man is a devil workshop. As far as those youths are idle, the devil has to be using them for something.
Amid worsening insecurity across the country, the overstretched military continues to battle insurgents in the northeast, bandits in the northwest, farmer-herder conflicts in the north-central, and secessionist unrest in the southeast. Also high up the list of achievements by security operatives is the prosecution and conviction of over 205 persons for various terrorism offenses in 2025. While the kinetic efforts of the military to end insurgency are well documented, security experts say military action alone will not end this war. At the regional level, Nigeria continues to enforce its military leadership across the ECOWAS region and even stretching beyond the Sahel. For instance, Nigerian fighter jets carried out airstrikes to thwart a coup bid in Republic of Benin, in which mutinying soldiers tried to seize power from President Paris Talon. Security sources say the deployment forms part of Nigeria's precautionary measures to assess regional security implications and safeguard national interests amid uncertainty in Cotonou.
President Tinubu, since he came in 2023, he's been the greatest advocate of democracy in the West African sub-region. In fact, in his first meeting that he attended with ECOWAS in Guinea-Bissau, he made it clear that democracy is the best form of government. And it should not be glorifying military rule, that despite the problems of democracy, we see the best form of government. And I think he has remained very, very solid on that, always saying it. When the coup happened in Niger, he was then the ECOWAS chairman. He made efforts, very strenuous efforts to reverse what happened there. But because of even our own internal politics, the government could not make much headway.
As the year comes to an end, it is clear that there is a renewed vigor by the government to end insecurity. However, analysts blame governance failure at both federal and state levels for the crisis, citing poverty and ignorance, overstretched security forces, ignored early warnings, and weak justice systems. Vigilantes and mob justice are also on the rise, feeding a cycle of violence. The toll extends beyond lives lost. Farms lie abandoned, schools shut, markets deserted, and displaced families crowd into camps. Sadly, communities are left to mourn and rebuild with little or no support. Despite government's efforts, the gap between Abuja's rhetoric and on-the-ground realities remain glaring. Nigerians are hoping that the security sector reforms will yield fruits and lead to more peaceful communities in 2026. Ferdinand Durocher, Arise News.